Hey there, this is Jackie, and I am going to show you today how to make a baby's bib. A bib is a great baby gift for someone in your family, a friend, a baby shower. It's easy to use, it's low cost, it does not take a lot of fabric, and it's a great way to start a project if you're a beginner sewer because it's pretty simple. The tools that you'll need are terry cloth, cotton fabric, thread, the bib pattern, pins, Velcro or snaps, and scissors. The first thing we're going to do is cut out our pattern and then cut out our fabric. To do this, we will cut out the pattern, which remember is for half of the bib, and then we're going to fold the fabric and line up the folds of this fabric with the fold line on our pattern piece. So that way, when we cut out the pattern with the fabric, our fabric is in one symmetrical piece. Once the pattern is laid out on the fabric, folded sides matching the fold on the pattern, we can start pinning. Be sure to pin in the corners and in the rounder areas to get an exact cut. We also want to make sure that this pattern piece lays as flat as possible. Now we can start cutting. Cut around that pattern and fabric where we just pinned. As you cut around the pattern piece, do not cut on the fold line because you do not want two pieces. We're keeping this as one whole piece. Just right now, it's folded in half. Now we're going to cut out the top part of the bib. You can either take the pattern piece and pin it around this piece of fabric just like we did before, or like I'm doing here, you can take the piece we already cut out, lay it right on top, and cut around. So now what we're going to do here is take out all of the pins. And when you do, it should look a little something like this. This might still be attached, so if it is, just cut around it. If you feel like this isn't round enough, feel free to go in and make it a little bit rounder. Same thing with this side. Now you have your front and your back, and now we're going to put it all together. So now it's time to pin these together. If you are an advanced sewer, you can try to hold it and sew it around. You can also use clips. I'm going to pin them so we can show you how that's done, and also especially with the round sides, those might move as you're sewing, and you want to make sure those stay in place because anything that moves can really ruin the shape of the fabric. So let's go ahead and pin. When I pin, I like to make sure that the ball side of the pin is facing on the outside because that will make it easier to pull it out as we're sewing. As I pinned, I realized that right over here, it's overlapping just a bit. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and cut around that to make it more even. Now, before we get sewing, I'm going to show you how we're going to sew this. So I'm going to start here, a little bit to the right of the middle, and then sew all the way around the edges and then end right about 1 to 2 inches before my starting point. Leaving this space between the starting and stopping points will give us room to turn this right side out. If we do sew this closed, then we will have to seam rip the stitches, which I usually find a lot more difficult to do, but that is also an option, especially if you accidentally sewed all the way around. Just be sure that if you do leave that space, you're backstitching both at the starting point and the ending point to reinforce those stitches before flipping it around. So now it's time to start sewing. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have the correct color string. Mine is up here, so we're going to change that out. And I'm going with blue to match the inside. Sometimes I like to do a contrasting color or a color that pops out, that's bright, just for something fun, especially for a baby. Maybe I'll choose a fun color for the top stitching. So I'm going to thread my machine. Mine does have an automatic threader, not every machine does. So just make sure that you know how to thread that before you get started. Now I'll put the bottom bobbin in, get that all set up. And now it's time to start. So like we said, we're going to start over here. When I start, I like to use a back stitch. So just a couple, 2, 3 should do the trick. Now we're going to go around and follow the line. I'm going to actually sew this on a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I just want to get as close to the end as possible because of how much space we have for the rest of the bib. Let's go. You can go as fast or as slow as needed. If this is your first time sewing, it might be nice for you, instead of just going and turning without stopping, you can stop, lift up the foot, turn the fabric. That way you know you're staying right on there. So now that everything is sewn down, we need to go in and clip around the curves of the lines. And the reason why we want to do that on round edges is because when we flip it over, we want to make sure that the movement is correct and that this will lay flat. So we'll go in and take some scissors and just snip just a little bit all around the end. Now you want to make sure you're, of course, not cutting into the stitches you just sewed down. You want to clip it down so it has enough flexibility. You can even cut off some of the extra ends, like over here, but definitely clip around where it's going to curve the most. You definitely want to clip it down by the neckline. Once you're done with that, it's time to turn this inside out. So the way we are going to do that is by start pulling it through the hole that we just made. So I know this can get tricky or a little frustrating even. Just take your time. You don't want to rip the stitches. If it's your first time flipping through fabric, making it being a little bit difficult is understandable. The first time that I ever turned something inside out was a more narrow tube, and that can be really hard to get through. So what I would suggest, if you're ever sewing a small tube for a channel like a swimsuit, or if you're sewing a narrow piece of fabric for a belt, a loop turner is a great tool for that. I'm loving the way the color looks. The blue against the white I think looks really cute. Happy with this fabric choice. And there we go. Now it's time to iron. The second to last step, what we're going to do now is we're going to top stitch all the way around the entire edging. What top stitching does is it gives that real store-bought feel of not just having an edge where it's just attached from the inside, but gives it that really nice border all the way around, and also makes the fabric lay flat. So the next thing we're going to do is top stitch the edge. Top stitching is a little stitch that goes right on the outside of the fabric, close to the seam but more on top. And what it does is it keeps the fabric flat, so it's not only functional, but it really makes for a nice clean edge. Now we also still have the hole that we turn the fabric through. To make sure that gets sewn through while we're top stitching, I like to fold down the bottom fabric and then fold down the top facing, making sure it's even with the rest of the fabric here. And once that's in a place that you like, we're going to go ahead and pin that down. So now that we finished the sewing part, we can see that the bottom that we left open is sewn closed and everything is laying pretty flat. We do have the extra strings over here from where we stopped and started, so I like to use my little shears and cut those strings right off. So now your bib is done. The last thing you need to do is create a closure so that way it closes around the baby's neck. The two options that you have are either Velcro, like so one Velcro I have over here, where you can just cut a piece however long you want it here on the end, sew each side, and that will create the closure. If you do decide to go with Velcro, you're going to cut the Velcro to the size that you want the length to be for the back of your bib. So you can either go an inch or two and go that way, or you can make it a little more of a square. It doesn't matter, whatever you feel more comfortable with and prefer. So when you're sewing with Velcro, you want to always sew the full square around the Velcro. If you have a colored thread in here and you don't want to see it, I would suggest changing the color of the thread to match the color of the Velcro. The other thing to pay attention to when you're sewing Velcro is to remember that when you are closing a bib, it's going this way. I have spent a lot of times undoing the Velcro and taking out all the stitches because I sewed it both to the back. So what you want to do is put the pieces of Velcro together as if they were closed. Then you put it on the bib neck where you want it to be sewn down. Then take the back of the bib and put it right in front, making a sandwich. Now you know which piece of Velcro goes where. So what I like to do is mark it so I don't make a mistake. So if you're doing this, you can take a pencil or a pen and write B for back, and then right over here, B for back. Then when you separate them, you know the back goes to there, and then you want to do the same thing for the front. F for front, F for front. You can even use a marker because it's not going to really show through. And then you know the front goes here, and you would sew that square down, and then you would take the back and make sure it's on this side and do back. And that way the closure is correct. Because I have a snap machine, I'm going to be using the snap machine. I don't know if there's another official word for snap machine, but I like calling it a snap machine. And I'm going to put the snaps in. The snaps I have are blue. I think that'll be a really fun color that'll pop with this. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in now. So here we go, finished product. The snap is in, the terry cloth is looking great, real absorbent for all that baby food. And now if you decided that you wanted to use a plain fabric without a pattern, you could go in and embroider it, or in the beginning before you sew these pieces together, you can go ahead and embroider love or the baby's name. You can really personalize these. And the other thing you can do to personalize these is change the stitch. You know how we top stitch this with a straight stitch? If you wanted to go a little bit more funky, you could do a zigzag. You can do any of the decorative stitches on your machine. So you can have a lot of fun and really personalize these by changing the color, changing the stitch, and embroidering something on here. That's all for now. If you have any questions about this, feel free to leave a message down below. And I hope you enjoyed this video and looking forward to making many more with you. Have a great day.